And welcome everyone. As usual, we'll be following you on Restream and the Rumble Rants, and we are out there on Twitter Spaces, where if you raise your hand, you're agreeing to come up, ask question. Ask questions, and also be streaming out on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, wherever we are, Rumble. Where else are we? All the platforms you'll be appearing there. Yep. Twitter. So today, let me get to where we're going today.
Facebook. We love Facebook.
That's right. Brian Dunkelman today is our guest. His new series, or his new show, is called Dunkleman, just debuted on Amazon Prime. He's an actor, comedian, and you know him from one of the first celebrities to experience cancel culture after he departed from co-hosting the first season on American Idol. So Brian will be here to talk about that. We got a lot of other stuff to get into as well in terms of surviving in this business, in that business, and what it all means, and how he's doing now. So in the meantime, we will also take your calls, so be sure to raise your hand. We'll bring you on up, and I'll watch you on Restream and Rumble, and we'll get started right now.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Hey everybody, welcome. We appreciate you being here. Susan, you all right today? Everybody good?
Doing great.
Doing great. We're looking over at the Rumble Rants, where our friend Jahep has joined us again, Jahan as we call him. And for something is going on with my Restream. For some reason, something is not right there. Yeah. So that's right. There we go. Now it's working. Some greetings for the Chomos there. That's what your mom
Chomos?
said. So what do we have to report on? Is there any interesting stories we should share with everybody before we get started? It's been an interesting couple of days.
Yeah, we had a really good time with Gutfeld and Kat Tempf and Tyrus. We saw Tyrus, and the show was a success, apparently.
I think it was good, yeah.
It's good to be in studio. I mean, to be actually in a live studio instead of doing it, not being able to go and visit. Like, that was the first time I had been back there for like 2 years.
Right. So because of COVID, they wouldn't let anyone in the building.
And they let me sit in the audience, and you could see my foot over your head.
Right. To the left of my head. If you ever saw my head, there was this shoe poking into my ear.
Thank God I wore cute shoes.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
I didn't know.
So there you go.
Well, I was crossing my legs, and my legs are long, and it just kind of was sticking out of the side, and it was right over your shoulder.
And it looked like it was sticking out of my head. Which was great. So, anyway, it's nice here. We're going to be.
So I made it onto the Gutfeld show at last.
Your foot did, anyway.
Yeah, I made a cameo.
Good for you. Yeah. So if anyone would ask any questions about that, happy to answer it. Or any other issues.
And it is the #1 show in late night, and they're very proud of it. Their numbers are good, and Gutfeld works tirelessly to bring the numbers up over there.
That's true.
Even though it's Fox, I know some people are just anti-Fox News, but it is a fun show. It's a good show.
Yeah, that's why I specifically do that show. It's a good show. It's a fun show. I've known Greg for a long time. I used to do the Red Eye show back in the day, which was sort of this cult show that now it's still sort of claimed by its cult audience from back in the day. I really didn't even think of it as Fox News, and the way I don't think about Gutfeld is that, and I think the Gutfeld show now that it's gone 5 nights a week, it's a little less harsh and a little more nuance and a little funnier.
Yeah, they're just making fun of people.
Yeah, they're just making fun.
Now, think about how many shows you've been on, Drew. Like, every late night show you've been on.
Yeah.
You've been on pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
Except for The Tonight Show.
No, it was on The Tonight Show.
You did? You made on there?
I did it a couple different ways.
Kimmel.
I did The Tonight Show when I had name finding. It's so frustrating. Conan O'Brien was doing the Tonight Show.
You've been on Conan. You've been on...
No, but when he did The Tonight Show, I did The Tonight Show.
Then you were on the other guy's show the other
Craig Ferguson.
You were on. I think about how many late night shows and daytime shows and channels and networks you've been like. You've gone on every channel. You've been on every, you need a Hollywood Walk of Fame star.
No. I don't know. It's just when
If I wasn't so cheap, I'd get you one.
well, stay cheap, please. I much prefer that. Anyway, but thank you for being there. Thank you for supporting me, and I'm glad that you could come out with those guys and see how fun.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Oh, Sarah Ruth, could you tell us about this new Novavax vaccine for COVID? It is an excellent vaccine. It is a more traditional platform. It's an attenuated virus, it's like a flu vaccine. It's really that's similar to that kind of technology. I will take that vaccine if they will allow it for boosters. That will not have. I don't suspect it's going to have great activity against Omicron, and it does have some myocardial inflammation associated with it. But my bet is that it's not going to be quite as bad as the mRNA vaccines. So I think it's going to be a pretty safe bet. So we'll see. We'll see how it was approved last night, and they haven't given specific guidelines. I did. I point this out yesterday, or maybe I was talking to Adam about this. That Dr. Fauci did an interview on MSNBC. I think I did talk about this yesterday, and he was himself. He was the same guy that I've admired for 3 decades, and he's being much more circumspect about everything, including whether you wear masks or choose to wear masks, and how you think about vaccination. I still don't fully understand why they are pushing so hard on the vaccinations of the very young children. I don't get that yet. The science isn't there. As I've said repeatedly on the show, please follow Vinay Prasad if you want up-to-date information. He's a brilliant oncologist. We've interviewed him here a few times, and he really gives good, solid opinions. Sarah then wants to know, can we take Novavax if we've had the Moderna vaccine? I don't know yet. My expectation is yes, but I don't know yet. And really the question we'll be asking ourselves is really, should we take Novavax booster? Should we take Moderna booster? Or should we be waiting for the Omicron booster coming out in the fall? And generally, if you're over 75 years of age, you should get boosted up as soon as the boosters become available. We do know pretty clearly, the science is pretty clear there, that the benefits are significant. Under that age, we immediately start to fall off a cliff in terms of following science. There's very little science. And as you get to children, there's almost no science in terms of there's not enough adverse outcomes in kids to be able to create a meaningful cohort in a study group. There aren't enough severe even significant illness. So it's hard to show an effect of the vaccine. So I don't quite know why. It just seems like they just are very very much bought into the idea that without exception, there's reduced risk from the disease when you've had the vaccine. Now, that reduced risk is dramatically changed by BA.5. It reduced the effectiveness of the vaccine against Omicron was circumspect, and now against BA.5, it's almost non-existent. It seems to be pretty bad. But we do think that it is reducing more serious illness. But I can't say that that's categorically true. We just don't know. All right, let's go to my guest, Brian Dunkelman. Let's get him in here and talk about his new series.
Enough COVID.
Enough COVID. Yes, let's get to Brian.
We're done with the COVID.
Well, I know, you're down with it, but I can't see you. Your picture hasn't come in here yet. Come on now.
I see you.
Caleb, am I missing something?
You hear me?
I hear you. There you are. There you are. All right, good to see you. So tell me about the series. It's such a pleasure. Is it a multi-episode thing on Amazon Prime, or is it just like just a documentary?
No,
what is it?
Don't really know what to call it because it's not really a documentary. It's not really a special. Basically, what it is it's kind of a one-man show with no audience, just delivered straight into camera. And I shot it during the lockdown portion of the pandemic. So let's call it a dunkumentary, I guess.
I love it. And what are we going to learn?
Oh, you're going to know more about me than you ever cared to. It's basically from my childhood, what led up to getting American Idol. Obviously, a lot of it's focused on my experience with American Idol. And then everything that happened afterwards, which, I affectionately look back on the post-American Idol days as the good old days compared to what was to come in the later years. But drug addiction, alcoholism, divorce, kidnapping. Where do you want to start?
Wow.
The kidnapping is the only thing that's not on the usual menu in my world. What's with the kidnapping?
Well, I have a 9-year-old son who is fantastic, but his mother started a pretty severe battle with alcoholism when he was just a baby, about 10 months
Uh-huh.
old, and
Yeah.
a couple stays in rehab at the same facility that you used to do celebrity rehab. So I'm very familiar with
Oh,
that
wow.
place.
Up
And
the hill. Yeah.
things did not get better. And I made the move of just taking him one day, and I went back home to Western New York so that she could try and get help again. And I got
Mm.
to keep him there for about 6 months. And then the good news is everything is wonderful right now. My ex wife has been sober for
Cool.
2 years, and
Great.
everybody's thriving right now. But it was a rough journey.
Oh,
Great.
okay.
It's good news. It takes what it takes, and it's usually not a straight line. People
No,
get a
it's
little
a
frustrated.
lot of zigzags.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of zigzags. One of the dirty little secrets of addiction treatment is with severe alcoholism. Yeah, I believe it's 4 years and 5 treatments, or it's either 5 years and 4 treatments or 4 years and 5 treatments before you are likely to get 1 year of sobriety.
Yeah, they said that about 5 years is the magic number, then you know you have a fighting
Yeah,
chance.
yeah.
So,
Oh
we're
no, it's
almost
5 years.
there, you know?
That's sustained. That's sustained sobriety for 5 years. Yeah, if you after
Yes.
5 years, your risk of severe disease is about the same as the general population. You're in pretty good shape at that point. But in terms of people think they can just go to treatment, everything's going to be great. But no, it typically takes multiple treatments and quite a bit of time before people get that first year under their belt.
Yeah, there was a period of time where things were so bad that when she went to rehab and all I had to do was take care of an almost 2-year-old all alone for 28 days, it was such a sense of
Mm,
relief. Oh, that's all I
mm,
have to do now. So, yeah,
right.
it's a heck of a journey. My heart goes out to anybody who has to deal with it, but,
Mm.
so far so good.
Were you guys still married at that point, or was the divorce something that happened subsequently?
Yes. Yes,
Mm,
we started dating around about 6 months before I got American Idol, which was, so we started dating in about 2001. We're together for several years, got married in 2007, and everything was fine. We're both drinkers. I come from a place where
mm,
that's what people do. And happy hours, are we going to go to a movie? We got to get a drink first, mimosas at breakfast, but it took a turn. We had a pregnancy that we lost at about 10
mm.
weeks, which was pretty
Oh,
traumatic because we went in for the first ultrasound, and it's a pretty magical experience. You get to hear the heartbeat, you get the
um,
picture. Well, a few weeks later, we went in for another ultrasound, and there was no heartbeat. So
mm,
that was a very difficult thing to go through, and something just triggered, and she got pregnant again pretty quickly, and that's really when the problem just got out of control.
mm. During the pregnancy.
No, after the pregnancy, although it was a very
Oh,
difficult pregnancy, she went on strict bed rest for the last
oh,
10 weeks,
sheesh.
failing placenta. And it was very, very stressful. And he came 6, 7 weeks early, and everything was fine. And well, about 6 months old, I was going through a bag of baby clothes that a friend had given me.
Mm,
And I felt something. I reached in, and I pulled out a little airplane size empty bottle of vodka. And then I reached in and
yeah,
I pulled out another one, and then another
yeah.
one, and I pulled out 13.
Mm,
And that's kind of when life changed.
mm. How old was the baby then?
This was about 6 months old. And then when he was about 10
Yeah.
months old, Thanksgiving, I was up giving him a bath, putting him to bed, and we had dinner with her family, and everything was wonderful. And then I came downstairs, and I found her unresponsive on the kitchen floor.
Mm.
And I rushed her
Oh
to the
boy.
emergency room and did some tests. And the doctor just came in and just looked at her and said, "How much do you drink? Because your liver
Mm.
enzymes are off the charts, and you have brain atrophy." And then we're talking about a
Oh
30,
boy.
29-year-old woman. And he said, "You're way too
Yeesh.
young to have brain atrophy." And that's when the journey changed. And obviously, I went home immediately, got all the alcohol out. I stopped drinking for about, 6, 7 weeks. I was like, "Oh, well, I can do it." But it just got progressively worse and worse. And then rehab was
Oh.
necessary. And then the thing that saved the thing that saved us was the pandemic. I got divorced February 5th, right before the pandemic hit. I
Oh.
went to court. I had run out of money. I was representing myself, but I ended up winning, and we got her on SoberLink for a year. So that really helps because the problem with alcoholism, the only way you know that they're not drinking is if you have proof, because lying is just
Right.
part of the disease. And
That's right.
she couldn't go anywhere. She couldn't go anywhere. She had to be tested a year, and this pandemic really kind of saved my family.
Did she have a DUI or something? I mean, how did you what happened
She
there?
did get a DWI. Yes, she did. Her health started to deteriorate so badly. Her hands were shaking. She couldn't cut her meat. She couldn't button buttons. She was losing feelings in her hands and her fingers. And so I don't even really know how long this was going on or how bad it was. Just an extremely high functioning, addict at the point.
Mm. Did you have to go to
But it was
codependency
interesting
treatments?
because, oh God,
Go ahead.
I did the Al-Anon, and we did the family stuff, and it's an
Yeah.
interesting thing. I felt resentment. Like, why do I have to go to these things? And then when you realize,
Yeah.
Al-Anon is not about the other person, it's about you. But you got to
Right.
go through a lot of stuff when you're dealing with this, and how much is my fault? She went through a lot with American Idol. We were in the public eye. It wasn't just my life that got turned upside down; it was hers as well. So,
Mm.
as I said, the good news is we are on great terms. We are divorced, but we just took our kid to Hawaii about 4 months ago, so we're on that good of
Nice.
terms. So it's what's best for him to give him some kind of semblance of a family.
So what were you doing when American Idol came along?
I have been doing stand-up comedy since I was 20 years old, and moved to LA, started getting little acting parts in Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place, Dharma and Greg. I did a
Mm.
guest starring role on Friends, and I
People
got a
forget
deal
who
for
was
my
in,
own.
people forget who was in the pizza place,
That's right.
the cast.
I actually was on
Yeah.
that show a
Some
couple times. But
some very,
yeah, I
very,
got a
very
deal for
famous
my own
people.
sitcom. Yeah.
Yep.
Ryan Reynolds, heard of him?
Ryan
Super
Reynolds.
nice guy.
Yep.
Even then, I had like
Yep.
4 lines. He's like, "Why are they wasting all this talent on 4 lines?" I'm like, people don't need to talk to you at all if you're doing 4 lines." But he was a really, really nice guy.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
got a deal for a sitcom with Castle Rock. And I always joked, I'll get a deal for my own sitcom and the world will come to an end. Well, I got my deal September 7th of 2001. And then it kind of seemed
Oh
like
my
the world
gosh.
was ending. So we pitched the
Wow.
networks. It didn't get bought, but a year later, they were doing this show at Fox called Pop Idol, and they remembered me. And somebody was there when I pitched and asked me to come in. And I'd stopped going on any hosting auditions. So I said, well, I'll go in, and I was requested. And I guess they'd seen 3,000 people already. And I went in and I auditioned, and I ended up getting it.
3,000. It's crazy.
Yeah,
And did you know Ryan before that?
I did not. I tested, and then with about 6 other people. And then it was just one of those magical moments where I got my first laugh, and I had him. It was all improv, just pairing us up, giving us information to get across, go. And it was one of those lightning in the bottle situations. Well, that night I went immediately to a buddy's house and started drinking because it's a very, very stressful process. I think I was 3 drinks in, and I got a call from the casting director. "We can't get a hold of your agent or manager. Can you come back at 7 a.m. tomorrow?" And I thought,
Perfect.
how can I do anything but
Perfect.
screw this up? No way am I
Yeah.
going. But it was just to have breakfast to meet this guy, Ryan Seacrest. I guess what they wanted,
Huh.
they were too nervous to give this job to 2 guys without broadcasting experience. So Ryan had a very
Mm.
successful radio show, had done some TV gigs, and we tested together. We were working the next day.
The next day.
The next day we were on
Wow.
set working. Now, let me give you a little backstory. I was coming
Uh,
out of a pretty big period of heavy drug use. I was doing a lot of ecstasy. The kids call it Molly now, and coke, and always been a
mhm.
drinker, and just got to the point where I thought I got to get a grip. At that point, I had nothing to lose, but I thought I've got everything to not gain. So I stopped and I got clean, and within probably a month, I booked 3 gigs, a commercial, an animated series on MTV, and this show Pop Idol. So I went into that experience completely raw because I was,
Mm.
starting to feel again. So that's the mental state that I
Mhm.
went into the show with. So it was definitely a challenge.
Had you just stopped or were you actually in the program?
No, I just stopped. No
Yeah.
program. I just thought you got to get a grip. I was able to do it, and I was still drinking, but I wasn't doing drugs. But very early on, when I found out really what the show was, there was a point that first day where kid after kid was coming out just bawling. I mean, some of them are
Mm.
devastated. And
Yeah.
maybe because I'm a performer and I've been on so many auditions, my heart went out to them, and I just didn't understand why they were doing that. And it just didn't really get any better that whole first season. And, this film is not about bashing American Idol at all. This is about me telling what I saw, what happened, so the audience can put themselves in my position. What would I have thought? What would I have done?
Oh boy, what would the audience member have done? You mean, well, how would you deal with this
Right.
situation? Right.
If you were me, how would you
I
have handled it?
remember.
Our son tried out
He
for
was one of
American
them.
Idol, and
Oh,
we
no
had to go to
kidding.
Kansas. Yeah, and we know Ryan Seacrest because we met back in the day, and we had
Mhm.
changed from San Francisco to Kansas City because my son was going to go to Vanderbilt. So we ended up in an audition with a bunch of people with banjos and ukuleles, and he sings opera, right? So he's sort of in the wrong place at the wrong time. He didn't make it,
Right.
and he was devastated for like 24 hours, and then he was
Yeah.
fine because then he was going to go to college the next day. But
Right.
literally it was like he had just lost the biggest football game of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he just was
Oh,
so
sure.
devastated. And I had to sit
Everything
and
is
look
so
at him at
it's so
dinner
big. When you're a
Yeah.
kid that
because he
age,
really
everything
thought he had a
is so
chance.
huge.
And
Right.
yeah, and
Now,
I
first
was
season of
kind of glad he
American
didn't.
Yeah, the first season, but you gotta understand, like, that, they were intentionally finding kids that weren't good. They pre-screened every one of those kids. If you were okay, they didn't have any interest in you. But I saw people on walkie-talkies like, "We got this girl, she's completely out of her mind, we're gonna crush her," and I'm like, "What are you this girl is 16 years old." So you're
Yeah.
intentionally letting these, let's just say, in some way deficient children audition, and then
Yeah.
you're crushing them. It just, I didn't dig it. To my knowledge, I guess American Idol doesn't do that anymore, and good for them. Everybody, don't we all wanna grow and evolve and get better and learn? And apparently they have too, but it was not that way season 1, and I could not deal with it.
For years, they had people who, well, it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is where you think you sound good or you think you know what you're talking about, but you have no idea. And it wasn't that first year when that Asian dude, what was his name? He actually became
That was
famous because he was
second
so
year, that
bad.
was William
Second
Hung.
year. William
Yes, and
Hung,
you know what?
right.
A couple years after that, I was doing stand-up and I was on an airplane, and, William Hung was on my same flight. And all I thought the whole time
Fantastic.
was, if this plane goes down, I'm gonna get second billing in the obituaries to William Hung. Like, that's the final insult.
Yeah. Yeah. American Idol star. And oh, by the way,
Oh, and that guy.
the guy used to host it.
Yeah,
Right.
that guy, the host, we don't remember
So
his name.
I do remember that first season. I remember when the two of you were hosting together. Uh, and in fact, as I'm again, my memory may be how long ago was it? It got to be 15, 17 years ago or
2002,
something like that. Yeah,
20.
20 years ago. Wow. Uh, but I felt, as my memory is, you sort of playing lead when the two of you would come out. You'd be the one holding the mic up to the performer. Am I remembering that correctly?
No, you are not, because as a matter of fact,
Okay.
when Ryan and I tested together, I had to sit and wait for about 2 hours. And I was thinking, gee, I'm losing my mind having to audition again. And people were running back and forth. They were actually doing his deal on the phone. And so,
Uh,
to what I was told, he speaks first. He is on the left. You know what I mean? Kind of one upping
yeah. Yeah.
everything. But no, he was more
Yeah.
of the straight broadcaster, and I was supposed to be the funny one.
The color. Okay, got it. And
Yeah.
what happened? What oh, by the way, who did you test with? I'm just curious. Anybody else of note?
You know what? The final guy, they put two of us together that had been in before. And I thought, okay, I'm with this guy again. This is a good sign. And they took us around the corner. I didn't know who it was, but they said to me, they said to the other guy, "You drive the train." And then they looked at me and they said, "You just back off a little bit." Because I had him in a headlock and I was not letting go. And the two of us went in. It was just 5 points of information. It's a singing contest. You're in New York. It's the second round, a judge's birthday, whatever, go. And we did our bit. And then he went, "And I have no idea what the fifth thing was." And he got a little bit of a laugh. And I
Oh
thought,
no.
man, is that what sealed the deal for this guy? And that guy was in the news a little recently. His name is Mike Richards. from
Oh,
Jeopardy.
wow.
Someone else who got kind of canceled. Yeah, so that should have been Seacrest. I often think, what would life have been if the two of us, if me and Mike Richards were the hosts?
Interesting. Wow, that would have been interesting.
I'm surprised they were even trying to have two male hosts. Like now, like in news and everything, they always have to have a man and a woman.
And now two white guys, forget it.
Yeah.
Two white males.
Right,
No way.
exactly.
yeah.
Well, they were trying to replicate
Yeah.
the British version. Two guys, their names are
Right.
Ant and Dec, and they've been a team since childhood. So they were trying to replicate this chemistry, but they put a radio DJ with an R-rated road comic, is what they did, and it didn't really work. The problem was, Drew, is they wanted me to be more like him. And I'm like, that's not what I am. I'm a smart ass. I'm a comedian. I don't do the jumping around and I don't do the cheesy stuff. And that's what they wanted from him. And look, are there some things in this film Ryan is not happy about? I hope not. I'm a different person. He's a different person. It's been a long time, but we had our problems. We did not get along, and I acknowledge my part of it. I've had a lot of time to look back and rethink all this. What did I do wrong? But I wish the guy nothing but the best.
I kind of remember
and I
you
hope
guys
he knows it.
razzing each other a lot, right? Like kind of.
Oh yeah, that was real. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I talk about it in the film. There was one episode where we read off a giant teleprompter. And 4 times in a live broadcast, Ryan did not say what was on the prompter, which was a direct setup for my line or my joke or my information. And the 4th time, you can go back and watch, he looked at me and said, "Say something, Dunk." And I said, "What do you want me to say, Ryan? How about we'll be right back with more American Idol? We'll be right back." And then I looked at him, I said, "You going to say one damn thing that's on the prompter tonight?" When we went off the air, I had to be held back. My manager and my best friend were there. They picked me up. They threw me in an elevator so that I wouldn't cause a scene or go after him. But I don't know why this happened. I mean, there was a very competitive thing that went on between us, but it's all water under the bridge. He seems to be doing fine.
Is that why things fell apart, or was there something else that happened?
That was basically it. Our chemistry was not there. I have to admit, I do believe I got perceived as difficult. Like I said, I was raw from the drug use. I could not control my emotions. As a comic, you have control over what you're saying. It's your words. They handed me the script that the executive producers wrote, my bosses, and it was so corny, Drew. I went out in my car. I cried.
I know.
I started crying. I thought, how am I going to do this? You want credibility
listen,
as a comedian.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So I, dealt with Corolla for all those years, and they would hand him scripts once in a while, and he would just go, "This isn't funny." He goes, "Give me a second, I'll come up with something. Read the script." He's like, No, you don't understand. This is not going to work, and history will not be. He kept saying, "History will not be kind to this," and I said, "Just let me just improv a little bit with this. See if we can come up with something." Read the line.
Yeah.
And
so I think I offended them.
Yeah, well, they don't. Back then, particularly, producers did not look kindly on talent. Sort of, I'm surprised they let Ryan whatever he was doing off script, because they were sort of, they felt they knew better. And then I don't know if you remember this guy, but I ended up broadcasting on radio with a guy named Stryker years after Idol, and he tested, right?
Yeah, I believe so. A lot of people did.
Yeah.
They offered him the job.
No, I don't know that he got that far, but he turned it down.
A lot of people
it's lame.
say
It's this.
No, it wasn't alternative. It was pop, and he won't work with pop.
Well,
Only
it was just, he
alternative.
thought, but to his credit, he was responding to some of the stuff you were responding to. It's like, it's too corny, it's too whatever, but he I don't think he actually got. I don't know the history there, but
No, I remember he passed on it.
Well, I don't
or
know
the
if it was-
opportunity.
Yeah, it was more the opportunity.
Because he and Ryan were kind of at the same level of,
I suppose that's
radio
true.
genius at that point.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, see, I hired
and
a couple
then-
buddies, a couple comedians. I hired friends of mine to do Punch Up. I could only come up with so many ideas for an intro for Randy Jackson, and I would get the script, fax it to them, and then they would punch it up. And if I would pitch the joke right before show, and then it got to the point, I just do it. I would just say what I wanted to do because I was just at that point. Why bother? They don't know what's funny, and I thought I did.
They don't. Well, you probably, I'm certain you did. Certainly more than they, because it's even people that are in charge of comedy on television don't really understand funny most of the time. It's kind of a weird thing.
Exactly.
I know Ryan was really nervous because I ran into him the second season and I said, that Stryker had passed. And he said, I told him that he reminded me a lot of Rick Dees, like a young Rick Dees, because I knew him back in the 80s. And he says, oh, I hope I can be rich like him one day. I said, well, just be professional and show up on time. Like, don't do stupid disc jockey stuff. Like, disc jockeys are known for being kind of nuts most of the time. And he looked at me and maybe he took my advice. I don't know.
Well, let's,
but it was corny and it was really weird for radio people to be doing mainstream. It just doesn't fit the profile.
well, I mean, dependent. I mean,
Well,
if
it
you're
worked
doing-
out.
Yeah, it worked out okay.
Yeah, he's fine.
But all right, so
It
I want
worked
to
out
hear
fine
more
for him.
about. Yeah, you said a comment a minute ago. I want to drill into a little bit after this break, but that you looked at the cancellation that you went through. In retrospect, now it's the good old days. Am I framing that correctly? Okay.
Yes.
I want to hear more
well,
about
because
that.
because of what happened with my wife and my son. That was the Idol was a walk in the park compared to what I went through with that.
I see. Well, we'll talk more about that after this quick break. I think we have found the holy grail of skincare. Genucel has absolutely changed, certainly my skincare regimen. I like that vitamin C serum, the under eye creams, skin nourishing primer. Susan loves the eyelash enhancers, uses it on her eyebrows as well. Genucel has everything to make us both feel and look amazing. Best part, the quality of the products. Using pure ingredients like antioxidants, copper peptides, and a proprietary calendula flower base, Genucel knows how to formulate products to perfection without irritation. For Susan, she hates that annoying dry area under her nose during allergy season, like right here. She's tried everything, but no matter what, the skin is flaky and dry. Nothing seemed to help until she started using Genucel's Silky Smooth XV Moisturizer. It soaked right into the skin. She was hooked after one use and now loves all of their products as well.
I am a snob when it comes to using products on my face. The dermatologist makes a ton of money from me. But when I was introduced to Genucel, I was so happy because it's so affordable and it works great. I was introduced to the Ultra Retinol Cream, which I love at night. All the eye creams are amazing. People notice my skin all the time, and I'm so excited because it's actually working.
Right now, you can try Genucel's most popular collection of products and see what I'm talking about for yourself. Go to Genucel.com and enter code DREW for 10% off. That is GENUCEL.com, and the code is DREW. Reminder that immediate effects can have results in just 12 hours. The Genucel immediate effects.
The eye creams are amazing.
Listen to Susan, everybody. She knows what she's talking about. Someone on
everything's amazing.
Twitch here. Unfortunately, because your name's in color, I can't read it against the dark background on my screen. He says WWWB, and what he's referring to is some of the silly shit that Adam and I used to have to say. Believe it or not, Loveline on MTV was first a Fox show. It was going to be a Fox late night show, and we had cleared 90% of the country, and we actually were going around to our affiliates all over the country, and we were doing promos and meeting people and that kind of thing. What happened was the company who distributed us, called New World, got bought by Fox because New World had a bunch of owned and operated stations that Fox wanted. They got those stations and they canceled all the programming, and we were part of that cancellation. But when we were out on the road, although we were a Fox, we were rolled out over Fox network, there were some cities didn't have a Fox station back in those days, and we would end up on the WB. And then they had that stupid frog from the Warner Brothers cartoons, and they would stand us in front of cameras. I'll never forget this one. They make us repeat over and over again. It's the WB. And again, Adam just goes, okay, well, that's awful. This will be gone in 2 seconds, and history will not be kind to it. And it was gone in 2 seconds, and we have made fun of it ever since. So there we are. The guest, of course, Brian Dunkelman. Brian's still with us. The new series is Dunkelman. What do we call it? Do we call it a stand-up, Brian? Do we call it a show?
Let's call it a special. Let's call it Let's call it
Special on Amazon Prime. Special. I love it. Special. His own special on Amazon Prime. And we were just talking about how things kind of unwound over there at American Idol. What happened?
You know what I'd like to, I got to take advantage of this, Drew. I haven't been in therapy in about 7 years, which is a horrible mistake. But
all right.
Hey, you're basically the Dr. Joyce brothers of our day. I mean, I know I'm dating myself by saying that, but like, I want to get into what I went through because I worked out. This film was the best therapy that I've ever had. And it kind of leads to something I'm going through now that I'd like your opinion on. But in the beginning of the film, I talk about my father died when I was 11 years old. I'm the youngest of 10 children. It was right after I turned 11, and something happened. Just briefly, there was a baseball seminar, and they put all the kids in 2 different groups. Our school district was 2 towns, Ellicottville, Great Valley. My father had volunteered to help coach. Well, when they split us up in the teams, I was supposed to go to one side, but my best friend at the time was like, "Come on, man, we got to play together today." And so I went to the other team, and the look in my father's eyes when I walked to the other side. And he didn't really say anything to me on the way home. And Drew, he died the next day. So I have dealt with that. I've carried that guilt. I've carried that shame. And that was basically the defining moment in my life was my father's death. This is what led to my early alcohol use. Probably 11 or 12 is when I started drinking, smoking pot at an early age, the drug use before Idol, the drug use during, but that guilt that I've carried my whole life. Now, after American Idol, and basically, I found out in a hotel room in Connecticut. My best friend was making his college coaching debut at D3 school. All my best friends from high school were there. We're in my room, and we're getting drunk before the game, and E is on in the background. Well, all of a sudden, they put Ryan Seacrest's picture, and they're like, Ryan Seacrest just re-signed for upwards of $1 million for season 2 of Idol. Still no word on co-host Brian Dunkelman. And then they put my picture up, and it's just silent. And then we all at the same time burst out laughing. Like, what the hell am I doing on television in the first place? This isn't real. We just keep drinking. And what had happened is they had re-signed Simon and they had re-signed Ryan, and they let me and Paul and Randy twist. And I started losing it. I was I was getting crushed in the press. I waited a couple weeks and I thought, I'm done. This is my sign. I'm moving on because I really did want to be an actor and I really didn't want to do that show anymore. And when the second season premiered, it premiered to 33 million people. Coupled with the fact that I could not get representation, I fired my manager and agent. Nobody would touch me. As one manager said, "You've got the stink on you." He said, "Nobody believes you quit." And the show became so huge, I could barely get out of bed. I became so depressed I could not function. In fact, I did have a road gig, and I remember being on an airplane and hitting a little turbulence and thinking, just go down and end this. Because, and then, like I say, I wasn't suicidal. I think I've got too big an ego to ever go through with it, but I was suicide adjacent. And I saw a psychiatrist and I said, I don't want to talk. Just give me something. I need drugs to take this away. And unfortunately, she prescribed me Paxil. I'm somebody who was she diagnosed me as bipolar 2. And Paxil is not what you're supposed to go on. And I went into hypomania and I lost it for a good year. Really, really out of control, drinking out of control, drugs out of control, gambling. I was driving around in my convertible on the freeway, like weaving in and out of traffic, like I was playing pole position. I just spun out. And of course, those were all the opportunities that were coming from Idol. Did a couple pilots, but I burned a lot of bridges. And that's what sunk me into a deep, dark hole that I was in for quite a while. And that's what I've been trying to dig out of ever since. Finally, started working a little bit, and I had the realization, I'm not going to make it big again, but I get a little acting part here, a little voiceover here, a corporate gig. I'm making a living in the entertainment industry, and I let it all go. And then that's what happened when the alcoholism of my son's mother started. And then nothing mattered. Nothing in the world mattered other than keeping this kid safe. And as I said, I just snatched him out of preschool one day and I got on a plane, I left. And it's all been about trying to recover from all of that these last couple of years. But when this was during the pandemic, it was my birthday, June 23rd. I had decided I got to get out of town. I got to go somewhere. I went to Palm Springs because there was a couple hotels and golf courses open. I got a call that morning from a guy that had basically called my manager. My manager said he wants to do a life, your life story. and we had the lunch meeting and shot the theater. But I relived every single painful part of my life. And in the editing process, I had to watch it over and over. And you try to detach, but every time, the loss of the baby, everything that I went through. And it really, I started to heal and I started to gain empathy for my son's mother. And if you would have told me I could even have been in the same room with her, I would have said, you're crazy. Cut to now, we go to the Rose Bowl for the 4th of July fireworks. We do things with him as a family because I was able to forgive her. But my mother passed away 4 months afterwards. After
Idol?
After we finished the film. So she died a year and a half ago. It was about 3 months after we shot. And going through all of that and reliving the death of my father. And then I knew when my mother died, she was 91. It was coming at some point. But
Sure.
I knew I was going to have to relive the father dying too. So I had something kind of pretty amazing happen. If I can just tell this story, I got a call from my sister. My mother was in assisted living. It's COVID. Mom's fading fast. She was on the phone, or she was with her in the room. Thank God this place let my sister be in, so my mother was not alone. I was on the phone all day. They came and went. She was still there. My sister went home to get some sleep. Came back the next day. I was on the phone all day. Still, mom was still there. And the nurses were like, we don't understand what's going on. There's no way that she should still be here. And as my sister left to go home, she said to, one of the nurses says, sometimes they'll hold on until they hear one particular voice. Well, my mother had heard 9 out of her 10 children's voices. My brother was in Ecuador. He was out of the country. He had spotty service, but he knew what was going on. He just wasn't responding. And I thought, you know what? He was with my mother when my father died. And I know that screwed him up. And I thought, this is too painful for him. But instead of getting angry, I texted him. I said, I have a theory. I told him what the nurse said. I said, I think it's really important that you call your sister right effing now and let mom go. The next morning, he got the message. He called my sister immediately. She put the phone to my mother's ear and she heard his voice and she died about 20 minutes later. And my sister said that the next song that came on in the room on the Sirius radio station was Come Fly With Me by Sinatra. So you can have your idea of what a coincidence is. Bottom line, that night, I don't know how else to say this. My mother came to me and I just started bawling. I hadn't cried yet. And I just looked up. I said, I'm okay. I'm okay now, mama. And I'm not kidding. The next day I woke up, I was not sad. I was elated. I danced around my apartment and listened to Frank Sinatra and sang at the top of my voice all day until I was too tired to stop and I had to stop. The next day, same thing. Just this energy coursing through me. My sister called me. She said, I don't know what's going on, but I am flying. I said, so am I. I said, I feel like I'm on drugs. And I know all too well what that feels like. And Drew, it has not gone away. I don't have depression anymore. It's gone. So either I had some kind of miracle happen or I've had a psychotic break and have been in a 1.5 year long manic episode because I don't know how to be happy, but I'm happy now. And I'm trying to harness this. So I do have concerns that I'm Thelma and Louise'ing off the cliff here, but there's been no crash.
No, I'm a little confused. Wait, what was a year and a half? No, year and a half.
My mother died a year and a half ago since the night she died when I had that experience. I have not had depression and I have had my hair stands on end when I talk to my sister on the phone. I don't know how else to describe this, but I feel like it seems to me the pain I carried around for my entire life when my father died, it's now gone. Yeah. And I don't know if this is some kind of divine intervention or if I've had some kind of break or if the work that I've gradually done has just led me to this place of recovery.
Okay, but Susan wants to jump in because she's a spiritualist. She has a million thoughts, I'm sure.
No. You tell us your.
Well, you packed a lot into that, Brian. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So let me kind of let me just parse out some of the things. The editing of the film, right? It's almost like you did your own exposure therapy. And exposure therapy does help people reduce the power of certain things. There's various kinds of exposure therapies out there. Usually it's thought of as something we do for anxiety or obsessive compulsive disorder, but it makes sense to me. It would also have potentially some good effect on managing things you had a lot of strong feelings about. So that makes
Sure.
sense to me. The psychiatrist that put you on the Paxil and made you hypomanic did you at least one favor, which is that now you know you have bipolar 2 because that's sort of diagnostic, right? The fact that you
Sure.
developed that. How was that period? Was it, I mean, why did they keep you on the Paxil? Why didn't they give you a mood
Because I was
stabilizer?
I
Or
was
did they?
lying. I was lying to her.
Because you were using. All right.
You're not drinking.
And
No, I'm
then,
not drinking. Are you not doing
okay,
coke? Nope, not gambling. I'm doing all of those things
got
because I
it.
felt
Got
incredible.
it. Got it. Because you liked it. You liked how it all felt, stuff too, right?
I loved it.
Yeah, right.
Who doesn't like being
So you
high?
have to. No, I get it, and you have to be in. So one of the questions then is something re-triggering a mood swing right now. Is this all part of a mood swing? And underneath that is a sort of a philosophical question, which is sort of like, who cares as long as you're moderated and you feel well. And if it was
Yes.
triggered, then the other layer to this is that many times when parents die, the child is relieved of a lot of things that he or she often can't shake until the parent is gone. And guilt and shame can be those sorts of things. Usually not grief, though. So I want to hear a little more, if you don't mind, about your dad. And
Sure.
what did he die of?
He just died very suddenly one day. He worked at our school. He was in charge of the transportation. He was transportation supervisor, ran all the buses and all the schedules. I guess it was a very hot day. He was working with some chemicals, some cleaner, and I guess he was talking to somebody in the parking lot, turned to walk away and dropped. And the blow to the head is what was the official cause of death. He just never came back.
So he fainted, and then secondarily the head and the bleeding in the
Yes.
brain, that kind of thing. Okay.
That's what the official cause of death was.
Right. And that's, for 11-year-old, I mean, it doesn't get worse, right? I mean, it's an awful thing no matter what. And the fact that you clung to this memory of having, I guess, let him down is the way you experienced that, right?
Maybe humiliated him in a little bit of a way.
Do
You're
you
helping
think
coach on one side, your kid goes to the other.
you're a dad now? Let's say you
I
have an
am, and
11-year-old son.
well, let's just say, can I tell you what a cathartic experience I'm about to have? Because in 2 years, I will be the same age my father was when he passed away, and my son will be exactly the same age I was when it happened.
Right. And he will do some screwball shit. And you know
Oh,
what you'll think
I'm
about
sure
it?
he will.
You know what I mean? And you'll think exactly nothing about it. It'll just be part of your parenting experience. So even though you, as the 11-year-old, have made this humongous deal out of this thing that even if your dad had lived another month, he probably wouldn't remember. Or if he did, it would be just some sort of like an explanation or what, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be that meaningful to him. He was just happy to be there on the field with you. You know how that is, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
just,
when do you,
it might not have been that big a deal to him.
I'm sure it wasn't. I'm positive. You think about it. You're a dad. Think about it. And
True.
so when are you going to forgive your 11-year-old self is the question. I mean, it's an 11-year-old.
I'll tell you when I did.
You're
I'll tell you when I
not an
did.
adult. When?
Drew, I did forgive myself when I helped deliver my mother to him. I was like, I think Dad's got to forgive me now. Whether or not there is anything to this, but in my head, I helped her transition, and I am proud of myself, and I forgive myself for. That's the one thing about this film. It's a big part of about forgiveness, forgiving other people, but most importantly, forgiving myself for everything.
I get it. I totally get it. And I think you had some unresolved grief lingering around because of that unclosed guilt loop you were in. You're stuck in that guilt loop, so you can never get on with the grief. And probably you were relieved not just of the guilt, but of the grief also. And that's a pretty cool thing.
Well, also when somebody's 91 and you're waiting, you know what's going to happen between the age of 85 and 91. And you see them slowly deteriorate, and you know that they're not happy where they are, or they get into a state where they're not able to communicate, and they don't want to be alive, or whatever. There's so much weight on the family just saying, you're going to be better in your new world. Once you pass, they're going to.
Oh, she was ready. For years,
Yeah.
she
And
was
so it's
ready, and
almost,
she was suffering from
it's a
dementia.
relief. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
terrible.
dementia, especially my mother had dementia, and the day she died, I had that same feeling like suddenly all this guilt lifted, and I, all the things that she always like made me feel bad about myself about, I just forgot. Like I just said, oh, I
Yeah.
can live my own life now.
Yeah.
But not only
that's
that,
experience.
yeah, but you just also feel such happiness that they're warm in a higher place, and
That's the
with
thing.
your
My
dad,
sister and I, my sister said, I think people are getting upset when I see them in town. They're like, "I'm so sorry about your mother," and she's like, "She did it." And people are like,
Yeah.
"What, are you crazy?" And we both feel this way to the day. And you know what? I have
Yeah.
not been doing stand up. I just started getting up and doing stand up again because I have to headline in 2 weeks at her memorial. Her memorial is
Mm.
in a little over 2 weeks because we waited until it was safe, and it's never going to be safe again, apparently. So we're doing it July 30th, and I'm speaking. And I am a little worried. Like, is this going to go away as soon as I am done speaking? I don't really know. But
No,
you had
no,
mentioned
no.
spiritualism. Can I just throw in the fact that I started seeing 11:11 all the time a couple years ago, and then all of these dominoes and these synchronicities have led me to where I am right now. It's undeniable. I never believed in any of that crap. Do you have any
oh,
opinion
good.
about that? Because it's a thing.
Oh yeah, numbers are signs. Okay,
That's her.
you're
Yeah.
getting little notes from
You
above.
can come on Susan's
Yes.
other show
Yeah,
where she talks a
we'll
lot
have
about
I
you
would
as a
this.
love
guest. You
to.
can
I
talk
want to
to your
talk
mom and
about this.
Yeah.
you can talk to your mom and dad. I worked with a lot of psychics I did a podcast for about 4 years about psychic mediums, and they are really good grief counselors. I gotta say,
That's
like
true.
if you,
That is the one thing I have felt about them, that they can
well,
relieve people out of grief.
one of my psychics, Cindy Kaza, is not only on television, but she became a psychotherapist as well. So getting a psychotherapist is really a good thing.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, I want one.
you can connect with your loved ones, because our brains are all connected still after people go to the other side, I think.
Yeah.
And numbers come through. Paulina, my daughter, they were born on 11/11. And so like every time an 11/11 comes up, they like have to show me. But
Yeah.
my dad's address was 707, and every time I see that, I think of him, and I know that I wake up at 707 in the morning almost every day. And
Oh, that's
I look
funny.
at the clock. Yeah, I look at the clock and it's 707. I'm like, "Hi, Dad." But you're not crazy, okay? So you have to realize that
Good to know.
Drew is a doctor, so he doesn't really like to talk about this stuff,
Yeah.
because it's all subjective, But if you know
Sure.
it in your heart, you feel it in your soul, it's real. And if you have a little conversation with your mom and dad, when you're in bed at night before you go to bed, they can hear you. They're still there.
Yeah.
That's my interpretation. And they will visit you. And sometimes they'll make water come out of the ceiling and electronics shut down all of a sudden when you have a psychic
Right.
in the house.
Okay.
So, yeah, don't do that.
All right. So I've got some questions for
All right, sorry, I had to go on.
So you were one of 10 kids. Where were you in
Yes,
the
the
lineup?
youngest. The youngest of 10.
Youngest.
I'm the baby.
And was that a difficult part of the lineup?
No.
Was it tough to be the youngest?
Phenomenal.
No.
It was
So-
phenomenal, which I'm very close to my
Okay.
youngest sister, probably my closest sibling, but she's the one who like kind of took care of me a lot because my mother and father, they as my mother says, Brian's just the one that we didn't expect to come along. So you were expecting
Right.
9, but they shot till they were out of bullets. That's what they did. But they would
Right.
go down to the Legion. My father was a veteran, and they were very active in that life. And my sister took a large part in the raising of me. But I had an amazing childhood. My brother told me, I never knew this. They used to line up to read to me at night.
Hmm.
My parents let them name me. I walked at a very early age because like I was a toy. And the thing that was cool is I was
Interesting.
always known as Little Dunk. And people that knew me because they knew my family, but I didn't know them, I just dug that at a very early age.
Where
So
was
I don't
this?
know if that had
Where
something
was
to
that?
do. In Western New York, Ellicottville, New York is where I grew up. Very small town, great place. But I like that. You know me, but I don't know you. So I don't know if that was part of what led me into this business. I think what led me to stand up was to
Could be.
try and fill the black hole from my father. That's why I got into
The
this.
void. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I have a couple of questions. Anybody else in your family have bipolar or substance issues?
We are pretty sure one of my brothers does. We're actually laughing about it because we're on a text chain and it's nonstop. And it happens to be the brother that I got to call. So I think he has had an experience also, and I don't think he knows what to do with it. And I'm looking forward to seeing him and speaking to him about it. But I think we all got a little touched, but I think so. I had a couple uncles that were, just a little touched. That's the best way to describe my brother. And I'm a little touched too. I mean, you have to be to be in this business.
Yeah, I suppose.
Everybody else.
And so back to the American Idol days, were you doing drugs or alcohol during the filming of that first season at all?
I was drinking heavily, but I do acknowledge in the film that I slipped once, and the night before a live show, look, I was, after a couple cocktails and somebody says, "Hey, we should get some Coke." And I'm like, "Well, here's some money, go get it. That sounds like a great idea." And I did Coke, and I think I fell asleep at 7 a.m., went to work, blocking, rehearse, live show, and I pulled it off. And then that night, I went to a buddy's house, and he had
Caleb,
some Coke.
I lost
so
sound. Is that just on
I'm
our
still,
end? Or, here we go.
I
Hold
can
on
still
one
hear
second.
you.
Brian, 1 second. There you go. You're back. Say it again.
Yeah. So I did Coke the night before a live show. I fell asleep at probably 7 a.m., went in, rehearsed, blocked, did live television, pretty cracked out, and pulled it off. And that night, I went to a buddy's house, and there were a couple people there, and he had some Coke, and I did what any sane, normal person would do. I did the same goddamn thing again, and I stayed up doing Coke all night, 2 nights in a row, did live television the next night, 2 times in a row. So, but that was the only time I slipped. And then once the show was over, forget it. It was right back into it.
And it might have had to some of your irritability with Ryan. I suspect it might have not been just the feeling things when you were detoxing, but then you started using again. That's a roller coaster, man. And doing
it really is.
In the meantime, and you're riding a Bronco. And how old were you at the time?
I was 30. I do say I'd like to think I was just young and stupid, but I wasn't that young. I mean, I was 30 years old. Still pretty young. How did you come out to Los Angeles, to the West? How did you happen to come out?
came out.
I moved to Colorado. My brother was in the Air Force, and he was out of the country for a couple of years. I started doing stand-up when I was 20 years old. And a couple of years later, I went to Colorado to visit him, got into a club there, and he said, why don't you move here? You can live with us and my kids, and I'll get you a job at the golf course. So I worked at the golf course. I'd get there at 5:30 a.m. and then I'd be at the comedy club every night till close, picking brains and trying to get on stage and meeting every comic. And I was seen by a casting scout from Disney. And then I moved actually very close to my 25th birthday. I was there for about a year. And the day I got in, she was like, I told you to kept telling you to get out here. I lost my job. And so I was like, well, I'm here. And then that's how I got to LA, and then just got into the comedy scene and just tried to figure it out.
Interesting. And where's your wife from? How did you meet her?
Grew up in Pasadena, met through a friend that I befriended at the Improv, one of the guys that was one of the showroom managers. It was one of his friends from Boston College. So we just started dating pretty much right away. And then her life got turned right upside down with mine.
Goodness. And how was she affected by American Idol?
It was a lot of stress for me and her. She absorbed a lot of it. Look, we met the first night we hooked up, we were on ecstasy, so we did drugs beforehand, and then we got clean, and then it was just the alcohol. But, it was a lot to deal with. It was a lot. I mean, it was wonderful too. We got to go out to really expensive dinners and go on trips, but, I was not fun to be around. And especially after that second season, or after the second season premiered. She came home to find me there's symmetry, because she came home to find me on the kitchen floor, curled up with a bottle of bourbon, bawling, saying, I'm going to kill myself. I didn't know what else to do. I just did not want to be alive anymore. So she was there for me. And then cut to all the years later, I find her on the floor. So it's kind of almost a beautiful love story, this film as well.
And take me forward from now. What are you looking forward to? What's Brian Dunkelman's life like? How is this special affected you? What's the future look like?
Well, I can tell you, let's go back to when I told you I started seeing 1111 everywhere. And I thought, I'm done making my own decisions. Everything I do is wrong. I'm just going to put my hands up and enjoy the ride. And so I'm literally not kidding. I'm following the breadcrumbs, and they've led me to that guy contacting me about doing the film. We do the film. I put the trailer online. Somebody from a production company sees it. Oh, I've always loved that guy. Contacted me. I'm in development for my own television show right now. It's basically kind of a
congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I mean, it almost feels like something happened at CERN and I got shot into another reality, because I'm not miserable. I have this joy in my heart, and I'm just following my instincts. And when you give yourself over to the universe, if something doesn't happen that you want to happen, you have no justification for being upset. If you're going to say, well, that's the way it's supposed to be, I'm going to pivot immediately. And that's not what I used to do. And it's what I'm doing now. I got a call out of the blue 3 months ago, just offering me an acting role. The first time I've acted since I took my son. It was 6.5 years ago. My reps dropped me, and it was an offer. And the name of the show, Second Chances. All these synchronicities they're too much to deny. It would make a good feature film. I'm still writing the script on that, but I don't know if I want to relive anymore. But I'm really looking forward to. We're going to start shooting for this show, and then hopefully somebody will think it's good, and it'll be on the air.
We see stuff like this in recovery all the time. People that I understand.
My son's
we see
one,
stuff like this all the time in people who let go. It's faith. It's leap of faith. It's sort of letting things go and having faith that things will be, that you're sort of flowing with the universe rather than trying to control it. And, if you're an addict or alcoholic or using a lot of drugs, I mean, the controlling becomes the whole thing. It's a lot of what you spend your time doing. And
Sure.
The other thing, I feel like you've, this is not going to sound quite right because it's not quite what I mean, but you're not, humility is the word that comes to my lips, but it's more that you're not self-absorbed. Does that make sense? In the sense that you're not in your pain, and you're not in your guilt, and you're not in all these things that make you self-absorbed.
No, I'm not self-absorbed. I get what you mean. I'm a big fan of myself. I'm not a narcissist. I really like me. But I am not a prisoner of my own thoughts anymore.
Right.
By the way, meditation is what saved me. I started meditating. The first meeting that I went to, my wife she was my wife at the time. It was a meditation themed AA meeting. I went with her. They shut the lights off. I meditated for the first time, and I was literally high when I walked out of there. And I thought, there's something to this. None of this would have been possible without. It's been 7 years now. I've been meditating every day.
Like TM or just mindfulness, or what are you doing? Anything special?
Usually just mindful. And if there's distractions, I made up a little mantra, but it's just mindful meditation and breathing. And I don't think I could live without it at this point.
Yeah, the breathing.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And again, I want to put a finer point on the self-preoccupied comment I made. If you're in pain, hit your finger with a hammer sometime and tell me if you aren't thinking about yourself. When you're in pain, you become naturally self-preoccupied. That to me, this notion of people being self-preoccupied is a negative. To me, it's a natural result of having guilt and unresolved grief and all these things you've been describing and the recent traumas with your wife. And of course you're going to be self-preoccupied. It couldn't be otherwise. It's just the way it is. But it feels like talking to you now based on how you were describing things even a year ago, like this is lifted and you're able to have that faith and move forward and forgive yourself. All those things that they talk about in the program.
Yeah. I mean, whatever your higher power is. I don't have the answers. Anybody who thinks they have the answer is absurd. You're a crazy person. Even if you're an atheist. I mean, come on. Nobody knows what this is. Here's another thing.
It could be your mother. Your higher power could be your mother in the afterlife. Now you feel like you can connect to something.
Once you think what, Brian?
Well, basically, I'm kind of I'm doing what the universe tells me to do. And if it's my mother giving me signs through the universe, then maybe my mother is guiding me. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not going to stop on this
Right.
path because everything is going right. But when look, 5 of us were in town, 5 of us live in our hometown. And when she was buried, 5 watched on a Zoom and 5 were there. And not once did I feel an ounce of anger or resentment. Why did this happen during COVID? Why couldn't I be there? Why couldn't I have been holding her hand? Didn't have any of it. So grief in the absence of anger, what a concept. It's a beautiful thing. It was really beautiful. And I still have not hugged 5 of my siblings. So a couple weeks from now is going to be really cathartic for me. But I'm just going to keep going on because it's working. And my son is thriving and his mother is thriving. And when life is so bad, and I have to admit this, it was so bad, I prayed for my son's mother to die. That's how bad it was. And to think, just imagine that, your son's mother, and to now have everything be so wonderful. Of course I'm living in gratitude and not resentment because life was so bad and now it is so beautiful and I'm just going to keep living in it.
Well, I think that's a good place to sort of
So proud of you.
roll to a stop. It's a great story,
Thank you.
and I can't wait to see I can't wait to see the special. You just search for it on Amazon Prime.
Just go ahead and put in Dunkelman, Dunkleman.
All right, Brian. Really a pleasure to talk to you. And it's one last question from me. Have you ever thought about going in and embracing more thoroughly a recovery program like your wife did? I don't mean in treatment. I mean like just going to some 12-step meeting, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I should have kept going to the Al-Anon, but I'm taking care of a toddler. I don't have time for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do want to.
Yeah.
I want to go further with all of this, all of the self-recovery, all of the more deeper into meditation, deeper into what is really happening, what is the fabric of reality, what all these negative thought patterns that I'm releasing. I didn't get canceled. I was self-destructive. Here, can I just end? Maybe, how about this theory for a realization? The guilt and the shame that I felt when my father died, did I put myself on this path because I felt like such a victim that I wanted to get as famous as I could so that I could self-sabotage and be a victim to the whole world? That's the thought that I've had, it's kind of deep to wrap my head around. Did I do this to myself to punish myself?
That makes sense.
And it
finally makes sense.
Finally set me free.
It makes sense. It is deep, and it suggests you have a lot of ability to shape your destiny. So hopefully the move forward is in a much more productive growth.
Yeah, it feels good. It feels like I'm on the right track, bud.
Yeah, because you did do that, and the fact that you did do that suggests you can do a lot of stuff. So
I like the fact that you're willing to accept the fact that you screwed it up for yourself. You know what I mean? Like with
it's
the
hard.
American
It's hard.
Idol. That's why when Ryan said he was shaking in his shoes. He was like, I can't believe I'm doing it. I said, don't fuck it up, man. Just be professional and don't. If you want to be like Rick Dees, be like Rick Dees. Be a pro. Don't goof around. Show up early. Do your thing. And you know what?
Yeah.
It isn't that hard. But when you're in your 30s or 20s or whatever, and you work in Hollywood, you can screw up a lot. It's just the way it is. And that everybody had jobs. Like I remember working at the radio station with these guys at K-Rock because I was there when I was 20, and they were all goofballs, you know. And Rick Dees I worked with Rick Dees too. I worked on
no
Solid
one knows
Gold.
who that is anymore.
Well, he was the number one like DJ.
Yeah,
was really well paid in LA.
In Los Angeles.
And I did a little skit with him because I used to use models and put them on television and stuff. And I ended up doing it because I couldn't find anybody that day. And I was so impressed with his professionalism when he was on the set. You know, he was on time. He was super good at his job. You know, he was a professional, but he was also young like us. And he wasn't. But all the guys I worked with at K-Rock were just numbnuts. I mean, they were just goofballs, you know. They were always high. They were showing up late.
Yeah.
I did like 90 shows with the poor man, and he was late to every single one of them. I was there early with like 10 girls in bikinis, and he'd come prancing in the door a half hour after the show was supposed to start. And but
There's an
Ricky's
incentive to get to
Disco
work
Duck.
early. It's when there's tunes involved. Come on.
We did a funny thing about Disco Duck. My girls worked with him too, but it's just really funny because because when I saw Ryan, I was like, Ryan, you just got to take the ball and run with it, and
Yeah.
but I've only because I knew that, maybe I didn't know you, but maybe if I had given you that advice, it would have been helpful too. I don't know.
Oh, I just think this was
I was
my
like the
path.
old
I think
lady at that point.
Brian was busy
There-
with cocaine and alcohol. And some
Yeah,
couple of
that was
things,
my
and some
point.
massive guilt and a plan to self-destruct.
I was spinning some
Well, I
plates,
married
man.
a doctor. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's really what I hope people take away from this film is everybody screws up. Everybody makes
Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah.
Some not as big as mine, but everybody has their own cross to bear. Everybody has their own pain, and everybody's been low. And maybe people can see this and be like, "Well, God, if that guy came out of it, what's my excuse?" I just hope people are
That's
inspired by
100%.
this.
Yep. They will be, Brian, I'm sure of it. They're inspired by the comment. I'm looking at the comments in my chat rooms and streams here, and then they're impressed right now. They're enjoying this, and they
That's good to
feel
hear.
Well,
lifted up.
we've interviewed a lot of people over the years. We used to do a podcast called This Life You Live with Bob Forrest and Drew, and we've heard this
Yeah.
story a lot, of how they've come out the other side, but nobody's immune to it. You know what I mean? It might be your son, it might be your daughter. It's just it's out there, so you have to know, what the signs are. And your mother probably tried everything to help you and couldn't do anything, and you probably when
Yeah.
she died, you
Yeah,
probably
but-
felt like
but-
she was finally.
But my bet is, from where you sit now and the adventure you're on presently, you don't have a lot of regrets, I'm imagining. I mean, I'm
No,
sure you have
and let me-
painful memories and things, but not a lot of regrets. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. Once you make the determination that, okay, I don't know what you think, but I think there may be multiple realities happening, maybe at the same time.
Could be.
We jump in and out. If every possible outcome exists in an alternate reality somewhere in the multiverse, how can you experience regret? You're doing it somewhere else. You're just not aware of it. Everything that could happen, you're doing. There's a reality where I'm worth $450 million and you're talking to Seacrest
There's
right now.
there's a whole
That helps me get out of bed every
theory
day.
of physics. The many worlds hypothesis in physics is exactly that every time there's a quantum
into it.
measurement, the world splits in two. All right, guys, we
right.
got to wrap this up right here. Brian, we could talk more, and if you have more to promote, let me know. We'll talk more, and I can't wait to go see the Amazon Prime special. Thank you, Brian.
really
Is there a website
appreciate
or
it.
anything else
Thank
you like? Of course. Yeah, a website, anything else you like to refer people to?
BrianDunkelman.com, Brian Dunkelman on Twitter, at the Brian Dunkelman on Instagram, Brian Dunkelman TikTok, all the things. And I really appreciate you having me on. I've been a fan for a long time, and it's really cool to meet you and talk to you.
Pleasure is ours. Hope we'll see more of you. Thanks, Brian.
Take care.
And for everyone else, we're going to wrap this up. We got to actually go meet somebody. Are we going to be here tomorrow? We have no guest.
Tomorrow at 12, right?
We had a guest tomorrow at 12, but we do not now have that guest.
That's
so,
okay. It's up
but
to you.
we will probably be doing a 12 this time here.
We're not going to do Monday, so
We're probably going to do some sort of call-in show tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
just
we take
callers.
callers. So we will. I don't know what time though, because I have to do the thing at 12:30.
it was 3:00 our time.
Hang on, let me look at the.
Right?
let me look
I think that's what
Hold
Caleb
on.
said.
Okay, Caleb, are you still with me?
Yes, it's
Yes, I'm looking at 3 o'clock.
tomorrow.
3 o'clock.
Yes, tomorrow at
noon
3 o'clock
Pacific,
your time.
3 our time.
So why
That
did the
does work.
sound cut
Let's do
out? Do you
that.
know?
There's a weird delay that's happening between here and New York, and so what you are seeing on your screen, you're hearing everybody at the right time, but what you're seeing on your screen, Drew, is probably about between 10 seconds, and it went all the way up to 3 minutes behind. Like whenever I put the note on there that was
crazy.
saying multiverse theory, it was stayed on your screen for a long time, and it didn't even appear. It was like you were in a whole different conversation.
It was the spirit of Brian's mother.
Brian's mom, and we also though lost sound for a second.
You know what?
that
I
was?
need to unplug the cam link and plug it back in again and just reset everything.
Do you know what that sound glitch was? All of a sudden.
Yeah,
It's a
it was the
ghost.
same thing.
It's a
Okay.
ghost.
All right, guys, we got to run out. We thank you all so much for being here. Well, about noon to, Pacific, 3 o'clock.
We're going to go have dinner with our sober daughter.
Yes, that is the plan, and we're already late. So
No, I changed the.
good. Okay,
You're
perfect.
okay. You don't have to
good.
hurry.
All right, so I won't hurry, but I will say farewell. See you tomorrow midday.
Oh,
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only.
I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help. So I haven't finished my sort of demonstration. Unfortunately, how did you get this thing around this thing? What did you do?
Practice.
Oh, here we go. Oh, I see. He's used a cock ring before, is what we're saying?
I have not.
All right. Ugh.
I have used a penis.
All right. So the point is, once you finish the pump, then you snap this thing on.
Did you just shoot it off?
This is.
I don't think I want
You're
that.
gonna poke an eye out with that thing.
Well, I
Drew.
just thought of a new use of this, but anyway,